Okay, turning now to the latest on the volatile situation in Los Angeles. There are more protests there today against the immigration raids and the military presence. U.S. President Donald Trump says that the protests are, quote, an assault on peace and public order. Trump has deployed the National Guard and now hundreds of Marines into the city. California Governor Gavin Newsom has filed an emergency motion to block Trump's deployment of troops in Los Angeles. Newsom calling it illegal and accusing Donald Trump of turning the U.S. military against American citizens. I want to talk more about this situation in Los Angeles with Gary Barthel. Gary is a former U.S. Marine Corps officer and also managing partner of the Military Law Center in California. He joins us tonight from San Diego. Gary, I mean, you have extensive military experience, and I understand you're calling this a gross overreaction. Why do you think so?
Well, first, thank you, Sarah, for having me. This is a gross overstep on the federal government's part because the demonstrations and the protests going on in LA do not fit the legal description of an insurrection that would require the military to be activated to support local law enforcement to squelch any kind of demonstrations. The administration's efforts are illegal. They're unprecedented. And I believe that they're nothing more than an opportunity for the government to try and squelch freedom of speech by those who oppose the administration's immigration policies.
Why? I mean, that's a pretty big allegation to make. Why would the U.S. president want to do such a thing?
Well, I think President Trump is trying to set the tone here that he's been attempting to take steps to address immigration issues in the United States, but the steps he's taking are not necessarily lawful steps. And if he did it pursuant to the law, then these issues would not be tied up in the courts. And so I think this is just another effort by the administration to try and move forward with the immigration issues in a way where they can test whether or not what they're doing is going to be considered lawful. It is going to be considered by the courts and will probably be taken up to the U.S. Supreme Court. What would have been the alternative for? I mean, the U.S. president has made it clear that he wants immigration reform and that he was going to pursue that. But what would have been a preferred avenue, do you think? Well, I think the preferred avenue, as the courts have set out, is you have to offer people due process. With regard to the situation in LA, the way it typically works is that you have demonstrations, and for the most part, the majority of the people who are demonstrating up there are doing it in a peaceful way. And we always have agitators who jump in on these demonstrations to create situations of violence. We had it with regard to the George Floyd demonstrations. We had it in the LA riots. And so we have it here. But those are a few individuals. Those are hundreds, maybe hundreds of individuals out of the thousands of people who are participating. And so the way it normally works is local law enforcement will try and squelch those individuals who are unlawfully demonstrating by creating violent attacks on the police, on property, that sort of thing. If the local police feel they can't handle it, then they let the mayor know. The mayor will then contact the governor. The governor has the opportunity to then activate his own state National Guard troops to assist. If that's not enough, then the situation requires the governor to contact the federal government and request the support of active troops. That's not what played out here.
No, it's gone a lot faster. Yeah.
Yes. And what played out here is President Trump took the initiative to bring in the troops, claiming that Governor Newsom was not taking the appropriate steps fast enough to squelch the violence. And so now we've got active duty troops coming into the streets of LA to try and suppress demonstrations and protests.
Gary,
a lot of people.
Yeah. No, I just want to ask you, we're talking about troops. You are a former Marine, and this is not in any way disparaging that I'm in any way saying anything disparaging about troops or soldiers or Marines, but they are not, as I understand it, necessarily skilled in dealing with protesters. What's your greatest concern here of what might happen, given what they're normally skilled at, which would be, at some degree, combat?
Well, their primary responsibility is combat, right? But Marines are trained in crowd control as well. And sometimes if they're deployed overseas, they may need to utilize that. But they are trained in crowd control. And if a particular unit is not trained in crowd control, but they're called up to participate in it, they can get the training relatively quickly. What's going on in LA is the active duty Marines who've been deployed up there will be utilized to protect federal assets and personnel. They're not going to be running down the streets, making arrests of the public. They're not going to be shooting at American citizens, none of that. So I want to make it clear that their role is simply to support and protect those federal assets that exist in that area where the demonstrations and the protests are occurring. Their role is to supplement the law enforcement that is up there, and it's the local law enforcement's role to make arrests and prosecute, those individuals who are creating the violence.
Gary Barthel, former U.S. Marine Corps officer, also managing partner of the Military Law Center in California. I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.